Every empire begins in the mind, and before a business grows in revenue, before a team multiplies in size, before a product reaches millions, it first expands in the imagination of its founder. Because the science of scaling begins not with spreadsheets or strategies, but with psychology. And if you don't master the psychology of scaling, no amount of tactics will save you. The greatest ceiling on your business is not the economy, not competition, not technology. It is your belief about what is possible. And most entrepreneurs start with passion, but get trapped in fear. They believe growth is risky, that scaling means losing control. They cling to comfort zones, telling themselves, I can manage a small team, but a big company is too much. And this mindset becomes a prison. Businesses plateau not because of market limits, but because of mental limits. In the United States, over half of small businesses fail within 5 years, and many of those failures are not because of bad products or poor markets, but because founders never learned to think beyond survival. They built businesses to pay bills, not to scale impact. And comfort whispers, stay small, while greatness roars, scale bigger. Yet the illusion of safety keeps businesses fragile. A small business dependent on a handful of clients is one disruption away from collapse. A founder who refuses to grow is one competitor away from irrelevance. And the psychology of scaling demands that you confront this illusion and replace it with a new truth, that growth is not risk, but responsibility. Imagine a bird in a cage believing the cage is safety. Flying feels dangerous, but the truth is the cage is the real danger. The bird will never experience freedom, never discover its strength, never fulfill its purpose. And entrepreneurs who cling to smallness are like that bird. They believe staying small protects them, but in reality, it traps them. Competitors innovate, markets shift, technology evolves, and the small business that refuses to scale gets left behind. Scaling is not about greed, it is about impact. The bigger you grow, the more people you serve, the more jobs you create, the more legacy you leave. Staying small is selfish, scaling is service. And scaling begins with a decision. I will think bigger. Replace fear with vision. See scaling not as risk, but as responsibility. Understand that growth is not about ego, it is about impact. The founder who scales is not chasing money, they are chasing meaning. They are building something that outlives them. Howard Schultz could have stayed small, running a few coffee shops in Seattle, but he believed coffee culture could scale globally, and today, Starbucks has over 30,000 stores worldwide. Schultz didn't just sell coffee, he scaled an idea. Jeff Bezos could have stayed small selling books online, but he believed Amazon could become the everything store. And today, Amazon is one of the largest companies in history. Bezos didn't just sell books, he scaled belief. Your business will never outgrow your mindset. The psychology of scaling is the foundation of every empire. If you think small, you will stay small. If you think big, you will build big. And that is where the science of scaling begins. Most entrepreneurs are trapped not by markets, but by the invisible walls of their own beliefs. Because limiting beliefs whisper that growth is impossible, that scaling is for others, that success beyond a certain point is dangerous. And these beliefs become chains that hold back entire companies, keeping them small when they could be great. And the truth is, every breakthrough in history began with someone refusing to accept limits. Jeff Bezos started Amazon in a garage selling books, but he believed it could become the everything store. Elon Musk believed electric cars could dominate an industry once ruled by gasoline. Oprah Winfrey believed her voice could scale beyond television into a global brand of empowerment. And each of these leaders shattered limiting beliefs before they shattered markets. Because scaling is not just about strategy, it is about courage. And courage begins when you confront the lies in your head. The lie that says, I don't have enough resources. The lie that says, I'm not ready. The lie that says, "I'll fail if I try." And the science of scaling teaches us that belief is the first resource. Because when you believe bigger, you act bigger. When you act bigger, you attract bigger opportunities. And when you attract bigger opportunities, you create bigger impact. So the cycle of scaling begins with belief. And the entrepreneur who refuses to break limiting beliefs will always stay trapped in smallness, like a prisoner who holds the key but never uses it. And the entrepreneur who breaks limiting beliefs unlocks doors to exponential growth. Because scaling is not about waiting for permission, it is about giving yourself permission to think beyond what feels possible. And the punchline is simple. Your business will never scale beyond the limits of your belief. So break the limits, expand the vision, and step into the science of scaling.
Scaling a business is impossible if it depends entirely on the founder's daily hustle, because hustle can build momentum, but it cannot build empires. And the science of scaling teaches us that systems are the skeleton of growth, repeatable processes that multiply output without multiplying stress. And without systems, every new customer adds chaos, every new hire adds confusion, every new product adds complexity. But with systems, growth becomes predictable, controllable, and sustainable. And this is why McDonald's didn't scale because of burgers, it scaled because of systems. Every store runs the same playbook, ensuring consistency worldwide. And Ray Kroc understood that systems turn chaos into order, and order into scalability. And the same principle applies to every industry, whether you are running a bakery, a tech startup, or a consulting firm, because systems are the invisible machines that allow ordinary people to produce extraordinary results. And the tragedy is that many entrepreneurs resist systems. They believe systems kill creativity. They believe processes make them rigid. But the truth is, systems liberate creativity, because when the basics are automated, the mind is free to innovate. And when the routine is standardized, the leader is free to strategize. And scaling requires this shift from founder-centric chaos to system-centric order. Imagine a musician who plays every instrument alone. They can produce a song, but never a symphony. But when they create a system, an orchestra, suddenly the music scales. And the same is true for business, because scaling is not about doing more yourself. It is about building systems that do more without you. And the science of scaling insists that every founder must ask, what processes can be standardized, what tasks can be automated, what workflows can be documented. And the answers to these questions become the blueprint of scale. And when you look at companies like Amazon, you see systems everywhere, from logistics to customer service to product recommendations. Every process is engineered to scale. And when you look at Starbucks, you see systems in supply chain, in training, and customer experience, ensuring that a latte in New York tastes the same as a latte in Tokyo. And when you look at Apple, you see systems in design, in manufacturing, and marketing, ensuring that every product launch feels like a global event. And these examples prove that systems are not optional, they are essential, because without systems, growth collapses under its own weight. And the punchline is simple. Hustle builds startups, systems build empires. And if you want to scale, you must stop asking, how can I do more? And start asking, how can I build systems that do more without me? Because in the end, the science of scaling is the science of systems.
Scaling transforms a founder into a leader. Because running a small team requires management, but running a scaled company requires vision. And leadership at scale is not about controlling every detail, but about empowering others to carry the vision forward. And this is where many entrepreneurs fail. They cling to control, they micromanage, they refuse to delegate, and as a result, their businesses suffocate under the weight of their own limitations. But the science of scaling teaches us that leadership at scale is about building culture, about inspiring belief, about creating an environment where people do not just work for a paycheck, but for a purpose. And Steve Jobs understood this when he built Apple. He didn't just design products, he built a culture of innovation. He created a company where people believed they were changing the world, and that belief scaled Apple into one of the most valuable companies in history. And the same principle applies to every scaled business, because leadership at scale means shifting from operator to visionary, from manager to motivator, from controller to culture builder. And when you look at companies like Google, you see leadership at scale in action. Because Larry Page and Sergey Brin didn't just build search engines, they built a culture of curiosity, a company where employees were encouraged to think big, experiment, and innovate. And that culture scaled Google into a global powerhouse. And when you look at Amazon, you see Jeff Bezos leading at scale by obsessing over customer experience, embedding that obsession into the DNA of the company so that every employee, every team, every decision was aligned with the vision of being Earth's most customer-centric company. And this is the essence of leadership at scale. It is not about one person doing everything. It is about one person creating a vision so powerful that thousands of people can carry it forward. And the punchline is simple. If you do not grow as a leader, your business cannot grow beyond you. Because scaling requires leaders who inspire, empower, and multiply. And the science of scaling insists that leadership is not optional. It is the engine of growth. And without leadership at scale, systems collapse, teams falter, and vision dies. But with leadership at scale, businesses become movements, companies become cultures, and founders become legends.
Scaling is impossible without scaling people, because no matter how brilliant a founder may be, one person cannot carry the weight of exponential growth alone. And the science of scaling teaches us that hiring is not about filling roles, but about multiplying capacity. Because every great company is built not just on products or systems, but on people who believe in the mission. And when you multiply people, you multiply possibilities. Yet many entrepreneurs resist this truth. They fear hiring, they fear delegation, they fear losing control, and so they cling to small teams that can only produce small results. But the companies that scale are those that embrace team multiplication, building cultures where employees are not just workers, but believers, not just task doers, but vision carriers. And Google scaled because it hired talent that believed in organizing the world's information. Tesla scaled because it hired engineers who believed in accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. And Nike scaled because it hired marketers who believed in inspiring athletes everywhere. And each of these companies understood that scaling is not about adding bodies, it is about adding believers. Because a weak team drains energy, while a strong team creates momentum. And the science of scaling insists that founders must shift from asking, "How can I do this?" to "Who can help me do this better?" Because scaling is not about doing more yourself, it is about empowering others to do more with you. And this requires building culture, because culture is the invisible glue that holds teams together. Culture is what makes employees stay late, not because they have to, but because they want to. Culture is what makes people innovate, not because they are told to, but because they believe in the mission. And when culture is strong, teams multiply themselves, attracting talent, retaining talent, and inspiring talent. And this is why companies like Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft scaled into giants, because they built cultures where people believed they were part of something bigger than themselves. And the punchline is simple. Scaling people is scaling power. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must stop fearing team growth and start embracing team multiplication. Because in the end, empires are not built by individuals, they are built by armies of believers.
Scaling requires demand that grows faster than supply, because no matter how strong your systems or how powerful your team, without customers there is no growth. And the science of scaling teaches us that customer acquisition engines are the fuel of expansion. They are the repeatable, predictable processes that bring new people into your business every single day. And without them, scaling is like building a car without fuel. It may look impressive, but it will never move. And this is where many entrepreneurs fail. They rely on word of mouth. They rely on chance. They rely on hope. But hope is not a strategy. Scaling requires engines, marketing funnels, sales systems, brand storytelling.
And these engines must be designed to run consistently, because consistency is the heartbeat of scale. Nike didn't just sell shoes, it sold a story. Just do it. And that story scaled demand globally. Apple didn't just sell devices, it sold a lifestyle. Amazon didn't just sell products, it sold convenience. And each of these companies built engines that turned strangers into customers, and customers into loyal fans. And the truth is, customer acquisition is not about manipulation. It is about connection. It is about telling a story so powerful that people see themselves inside it. And when they see themselves inside it, they buy, they commit, they stay. And scaling requires this shift from selling products to selling stories, from chasing customers to attracting believers. And the science of scaling insists that founders must ask, what is my engine? How do I acquire customers predictably? How do I scale demand without burning out? And the answer lies in building systems that run even when you sleep. Ads that tell your story, funnels that guide your audience, communities that spread your message. And when you look at companies like Tesla, you see engines built on vision. People don't just buy cars, they buy the idea of saving the planet. When you look at Starbucks, you see engines built on experience. People don't just buy coffee, they buy the feeling of belonging. And when you look at Netflix, you see engines built on habit. People don't just buy entertainment, they buy endless choice. And these examples prove that scaling requires engines, because without engines, growth stalls. And the punchline is simple. Scaling is not about chasing customers one by one. It is about building engines that attract them by the thousands. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must stop relying on chance and start building engines. Because in the end, empires are not fueled by luck. They are fueled by acquisition.
Scaling is not just about revenue, it is about discipline. Because many businesses collapse not from lack of demand, but from reckless growth, burning cash faster than they earn it, chasing expansion without control. And the science of scaling teaches us that financial discipline is the backbone of sustainable growth. Because scaling requires patience, reinvestment, and control. And without discipline, growth becomes destruction. And this is why Walmart scaled into one of the largest companies in the world, because Sam Walton understood the power of reinvestment. Every dollar earned was reinvested into expansion. Every profit was disciplined into growth. And this principle applies to every scaled company, because cash flow is king, and founders who ignore cash flow are building castles on sand. And discipline means knowing when to expand and when to hold, when to invest and when to save, when to chase growth and when to protect stability. And too many entrepreneurs confuse scaling with spending. They believe more offices, more employees, more products equal growth. But without discipline, these expansions become liabilities. And the science of scaling insists that founders must master the art of reinvestment, because scaling is not about consuming profits, it is about multiplying them. And when you look at Amazon, you see financial discipline in action, because Jeff Bezos reinvested profits for years, refusing to chase short-term gains, building infrastructure, logistics, and technology that would later dominate industries. And when you look at Apple, you see discipline in its cash reserves, billions saved for weathering storms and invest in innovation. And when you look at Tesla, you see discipline in raising capital strategically, balancing risk with vision. And these examples prove that scaling is not about reckless speed, it is about disciplined acceleration. And the punchline is simple. Scaling without discipline is collapse waiting to happen. But scaling with discipline is empire building. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must stop chasing vanity growth and start practicing financial discipline. Because in the end, empires are not built on revenue alone. They are built on disciplined reinvestment.
Technology is the great multiplier of modern scaling,
Because in today's world, no business can grow exponentially without leveraging tools, platforms, and automation that extend human capacity far beyond natural limits. And the science of scaling teaches us that technology is not optional, it is essential, because it allows small teams to achieve massive output. It allows startups to compete with giants, and it allows visionaries to turn impossible dreams into practical realities. And when you look at Airbnb, you see technology leverage in action, because it scaled globally not by owning hotels, but by building a platform that connected hosts and travelers. When you look at Uber, you see technology leverage, because it scaled transportation not by owning cars, but by building an app that connected drivers and riders. And when you look at Amazon, you see technology leverage, because it scaled commerce not by opening millions of stores, but by building digital infrastructure that could serve billions of customers. And the truth is, technology is the lever that turns limitations into leverage, because without it, scaling in today's world is impossible. And yet, many entrepreneurs resist technology. They fear complexity. They cling to outdated methods. They believe scaling can be achieved through effort alone. But effort without leverage is exhaustion, and leverage without effort is acceleration. And the science of scaling insists that founders must ask, what tools can multiply my output? What platforms can extend my reach? What automation can free my time? And the answers to these questions become the levers of scale. Because technology is not just about efficiency, it is about possibility. It is about doing what was once unimaginable. And when you look at Netflix, you see technology leverage in streaming, turning entertainment into a global habit. When you look at Shopify, you see technology leverage in e-commerce, turning small shops into global sellers. When you look at Zoom, you see technology leverage in communication, turning meetings into worldwide connections. And these examples prove that scaling today is not about manpower alone, it is about tech power. And the punchline is simple. Scaling without technology is like trying to lift a mountain with bare hands. But scaling with technology is like using a lever that moves the world. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must stop fearing technology and start leveraging it. Because in the end, empires are not built on effort alone. They are built on leverage. And in the 21st century, leverage means technology.
Scaling beyond borders requires global thinking, because businesses that stay local limit themselves to small ponds while the ocean of opportunity remains untouched. And the science of scaling teaches us that global expansion is not just about geography, it is about mindset. It is about believing that your product, your service, your vision can resonate across cultures, languages, and continents. And too many entrepreneurs trap themselves by thinking small. They believe their business belongs only to their city, their state, their country. But the truth is, every great company that scaled into an empire did so by thinking globally. Uber scaled because it believed transportation could be reimagined worldwide. Airbnb scaled because it believed hospitality could be democratized across nations. Coca-Cola scaled because it believed refreshment was universal. And each of these companies understood that scaling globally requires adaptation, because cultures differ, regulations differ, markets differ, but vision remains constant. And global thinking means building a brand that can travel, a story that can cross borders, a mission that can inspire humanity. And when you look at Apple, you see global thinking in design, products that feel premium in New York and Tokyo, in Paris and Dubai. When you look at Amazon, you see global thinking in logistics, systems that deliver convenience in America and India, in Europe and Australia. When you look at Netflix, you see global thinking in entertainment, stories that stream across nations, connecting people through shared narratives. And these examples prove that scaling globally is not about dominating one city, it is about transforming the world. And the science of scaling insists that founders must ask, how can my business adapt to different cultures? How can my systems comply with different regulations? How can my vision inspire across languages? And the answers to these questions become the blueprint of global scale. Because scaling globally is not about copying and pasting, it is about translating and transforming. It is about respecting differences while amplifying similarities. And the punchline is simple. Scaling locally builds businesses. Scaling globally builds empires. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must stop thinking in borders and start thinking in horizons. Because in the end, the world is not divided by lines on a map. It is united by vision. And global thinking is the key to unlocking that vision.
Scaling is not just about speed, it is about sustainability. Because many businesses grow fast, but collapse just as quickly, chasing expansion without building foundations. And the science of scaling teaches us that true growth is measured not only in revenue, but in resilience, in the ability to endure storms, adapt to change, and leave a legacy that outlives the founder. And too many entrepreneurs confuse scaling with sprinting. They believe success is about how fast they can expand, how quickly they can dominate. But speed without sustainability is a recipe for collapse. And history is filled with companies that grew too fast, ignored culture, ignored ethics, ignored long-term vision, and eventually imploded under their own weight. But the companies that endure are those that scale with sustainability. Patagonia scaled while staying true to sustainability, proving that legacy matters more than short-term profit. Apple scaled by embedding innovation into its DNA, ensuring that every product launch felt timeless. Starbucks scaled by building culture, ensuring that every store felt like a community. And these examples prove that scaling is not just about numbers, it is about values. It is about building something that lasts. And sustainability means asking hard questions. How do we protect our culture as we grow? How do we maintain quality as we expand? How do we stay ethical as we scale? And legacy means asking deeper questions. What impact will this business leave? How will it be remembered? What story will it tell after we are gone? And the science of scaling insists that founders must think beyond themselves, because scaling is not about ego, it is about impact. It is about building something that serves generations. And the punchline is simple. Scaling without sustainability is collapse waiting to happen. Scaling without legacy is emptiness disguised as success. But scaling with sustainability builds resilience, and scaling with legacy builds immortality. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must stop chasing speed and start building sustainability. You must stop chasing vanity and start building legacy. Because in the end, empires are not remembered for how fast they grew. They're remembered for how long they lasted and how deeply they impacted the world.
History is filled with businesses that scaled against all odds, and the science of scaling becomes most vivid when we study the giants who turned small beginnings into global empires. Because every empire was once a startup, every giant was once fragile, and every success story was once uncertain. And when we look at Apple, we see Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak starting in a garage, building computers with limited resources, yet believing that technology could be personal. And that belief scaled Apple into a trillion-dollar company. When we look at Amazon, we see Jeff Bezos selling books online, working from a small office, yet believing that commerce could be reimagined digitally. And that belief scaled Amazon into the everything store. When we look at Starbucks, we see Howard Schultz envisioning coffee culture as a global experience, starting with a handful of stores in Seattle, yet believing that coffee could connect people worldwide, and that belief scaled Starbucks into tens of thousands of locations. When we look at McDonald's, we see Ray Kroc taking a small burger stand and believing it could become a standardized system. And that belief scaled McDonald's into one of the most recognizable brands on earth. When we look at Nike, we see Phil Knight selling shoes from the trunk of his car, yet believing that footwear could become a symbol of empowerment, and that belief scaled Nike into a global movement. And when we look at Google, we see Larry Page and Sergey Brin building a search engine in a dorm room, yet believing that information could be organized for the entire world. And that belief scaled Google into a company that touches billions of lives daily. And these case studies prove that scaling is not luck, it is science, it is mindset, it is systems, it is leadership, it is culture. And the punchline is simple. Every giant was once small, every empire was once fragile, and every success story was once uncertain. But what separated the giants from the forgotten was belief, discipline, systems, and vision. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must study the giants, learn their lessons, and apply their science. Because in the end, scaling is not about reinventing the wheel. It is about learning from those who already built empires and applying their principles to your own journey.
The science of scaling ends with a challenge, because after all the principles, the systems, the leadership, the discipline, the technology, and the global vision, the final transformation is not about tactics, but about decision. The decision to stop thinking small, to stop clinging to comfort, to stop fearing growth, and to embrace the responsibility of scaling. Because scaling is not about ego, it is about impact. It is about serving more people, creating more jobs, building more opportunities, and leaving a legacy that outlives you. And too many entrepreneurs spend their lives trapped in hesitation, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for certainty, waiting for permission. But scaling does not wait. Scaling rewards those who act, those who believe, those who commit. And the final transformation is the moment you decide that your business deserves to grow, that your vision deserves to expand, that your dream deserves to scale. And when you look at the giants of history, you see this transformation. Bezos deciding Amazon would be more than books, Schultz deciding Starbucks would be more than coffee, Jobs deciding Apple would be more than computers, Knight deciding Nike would be more than shoes. And each of these decisions transformed not just companies, but industries, not just products, but cultures, not just markets, but humanity. And the science of scaling insists that you too must make this decision. Because the punchline is simple. The world does not need another small dream. It needs your scaled vision. It needs your courage. It needs your impact. And the final transformation is the moment you stop asking, "Can I scale?" and start declaring, "I will scale." Because in the end, scaling is not a dream, it is a decision. And if you want to build a business bigger than you ever thought possible, you must make that decision now. Because empires are not built on hesitation, they are built on transformation. And the science of scaling ends with this truth. You owe it to yourself, your team, your customers, and your future to scale. And the final transformation is the moment you choose to step into greatness.
Scaling is not a dream, it is a decision. And if this breakdown of the science of scaling woke something inside you, if it challenged your comfort zone, if it pushed you to think bigger, then now is the time to act. Because knowledge without action is wasted potential, and action without scale is limited impact. So here is your call to action. Like this video if it inspired you. Comment your scaling goal so that you declare it publicly and commit to it. Share this video with someone who is building their empire so they too can step into the science of scaling. And subscribe for more cinematic book breakdowns that will fuel your journey. And if you are ready to go deeper, the link to the science of scaling is in the description. Get the book, ignite your business. And remember this truth. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your team. You owe it to your customers, and you owe it to your future to scale.
because the world does not need another small dream. It needs your scaled vision. And the science of scaling ends with this challenge. Stop waiting, stop hesitating, stop doubting, and start scaling. Because empires are not built on fear, they are built on courage. And your courage begins now.